Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast where what happens in Kansas stays in Kansas. Super Edition number 6, Spring Fever.
So what does that make me, Miss America?
Hi, hello gladiators, and welcome back to Sweet Valley Diaries. It's still the hiatus, but you know, we gotta read these books. We've got a few books here that we're trying to get through, super editions, and Spring Fever is one of them. Have you read it? If you do, you might have thoughts about it. I bet you remember it. I'm here with a very special guest, Megan Keller. Hi, Megan.
Hello, Marissa.
So Megan, you are the latest in a grand tradition on Sweet Valley Diaries of roommates as guests on the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I was excited to read this book.
Easy to book. I always said the word book right after you said the word book, so that might sound funny, but I mean book in the verb sense. Easy to book a guest who lives in the room next door to you.
Yeah.
The very first guests on the first episode of Sweet Valley Diaries were my two roommates at the time.
I saw that, and I was really excited. When I looked up your podcast, I was like, I know of Selah, and I was like, I know Kat.
Yeah. You're like, there's a picture of those girls on a refrigerator.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, listeners, lest you think that I somehow have like a crazy rotating cast of roommates, it's just a normal rotating cast of roommates. I've lived in the same apartment for a long time, and you know, it's Los Angeles, people move, things happen, especially pandemic things. But
Definitely.
I'm very happy to have you as my roommate now for many months, and
too.
as a guest.
Very happy to be here. I've never been in your room, so it's very
Oh, is that
exciting.
true? I didn't realize that. Well, welcome. I should have cleaned more for you. So this is also exciting, listeners, that we are in the same physical space. That's pretty cool. I haven't had an episode like that in quite some time either.
Oh, yeah, obviously. I hadn't thought about it. But yes, we can be in the same space. Feel so
Yay.
lucky.
It's very special.
Yeah.
We have a lot to talk about Spring Fever, like literally what happens in the book, and then also about how the book fits into the world of the Sweet Valley series. But first off, do you have any prior experience with the Sweet Valley High universe?
This is my first Sweet Valley High book. I have read lots of The Babysitter's Club, but I don't know why. I don't know how I missed these as a youth. So this one, it was very interesting. I know you've mentioned that this book is different.
I probably said this every time we do a super edition, but they are kind of challenging from the podcasting perspective, and also from your perspective, listeners, should you be trying to read along, which I have to say, absolutely not a requirement. But they are not available as ebooks, so we have to get physical copies. So I figured that we could share the book, which was also the case with the last super edition, the super thriller I did with my dad, where we ended up sharing a copy of the book. So that means that I read it first, and I kind of warned Megan that it was going to be an unusual Sweet Valley High book, largely because they are not in Sweet Valley.
No, they are not.
And that's something that you could gather just by looking at the cover of the book. I didn't fully grasp this, but do you see where they are?
Yes, like where they didn't go there. I mean, maybe on their way back from the airport, they didn't go to a field.
They're in this. So we've got Jessica and Elizabeth on the cover of this book. This cover is just a really, really special one, I think. They are not just in a kind of oil painting, vague background. They're in a specific physical location. Outdoors, in front of like a big field of hay or something. It's like a dried up hay field.
Yes.
Or grasses.
Yes.
I wish I could remember the painter's name, but you know that famous painting of the young woman in the field, and she's like laying down in a field, sort of like reaching out towards something. That's what this field looks like. Except instead of a young woman reaching out towards something, it is just two happy Californian girls looking very rosy cheeked and just thrilled to be in this empty ass field.
I was really excited when I was reading the book, and then I could, like, near the end, I could be like, this is Jessica, and this is Elizabeth.
Right.
I think Jessica's, she's wearing, I didn't even know this was a type of outfit, but it was a gingham dress. Is that correct?
A gingham dress,
yes.
yeah.
And it's described as low enough to be fashionable, but high enough not to alarm her aunt and uncle.
Right. And alarming their aunt and uncle is like a major conflict point in the book Spring Fever. Like, will Uncle Herman and Aunt Shirley be able to handle these Wakefields and their crazy Californian ways? Then we've got Elizabeth, super cute, in a red neck scarf, and she's wearing like a big old belt buckle. And I mean, these two girls, they look like they're ready to go to a hoedown or maybe a square dance.
Ooh,
which is absolutely what they're doing. This is the outfit that they wear toward the end of the book when, like, every Sweet Valley book does have to have some kind of big party or dance, and this book is no different. It is a big square dance because that's what people do in Middle America.
Makes sense.
The gladiators, as we call our listeners, may be wondering, like, who are Uncle Herman and Aunt Shirley? Why on earth are Jessica and Elizabeth in front of a field? Well, as was alluded to in the intro to the show, they are in Kansas. We find out, like, right at the beginning. What did you think of the first chapter of the book?
The first chapter, well, we find out they're going to Walkersville, and I was like, I first Googled Walkersville. Is it a real place? No, it is not.
Walkersville, Kansas. And they're like, well, Elizabeth is excited about it, and Jessica is jealous.
She packed a lot. She packed a lot of outfits to go to Walkersville. And I just had a really hard time fathoming how big this town was.
The town of Walkersville?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Jessica's not too psyched about going to Walkersville, Kansas, which I have to say is a very relatable reaction to spending your spring break with because this is one of these spring break books where it happens outside of school so they can go on a trip. So spending that in a small town in Kansas with your elderly great aunt and uncle does not sound like a super great fun way, whether you're a Jessica or an Elizabeth, to spend your spring break.
10 days is a very long time when you think about it.
Also, 10 days spring break, like, wow.
I wish I had a spring break.
Yeah, I think, what did we get? Like an 8-day spring break, right? Because or 7, 8, 9. I guess you get 9 days if you count both weekends. But that's not what's happened. They just, I don't know, they just had an extra long spring break, and it goes right to the mystery time zone of the Sweet Valley books because they've had several other spring breaks, and when this spring break is over, they're going to go back and it's going to be junior year again. So.
Okay, it's junior year again. Okay.
So you gotta ask, like, does this exist in a universe where Elizabeth and Jessica never went to France like they did in a book? Actually, Kat, our former roommate Kat, was my guest for that one. Also of the first ever episode of the podcast. But Elizabeth is, of course, excited because she's Elizabeth and she wants to learn what it's like. Actually, there's a passage here that I can read.
I love it.
Okay, so this is when Elizabeth and Jessica have landed in Walkersville and they're whatever airport they flew into. We don't know. Unknown. Their aunt and uncle are driving them. This is their great aunt and uncle. They clarify that at some point. They're more like grandparent age. All right. The early spring fields stretched around them on all sides, a soft celery color. Here and there, groups of cattle grazed together in pastures. The blue of the sky was soft and luminous. The landscape was so peaceful and lovely, Elizabeth thought she knew then what her mother meant about the magic of that part of the country. "I'm so glad we've come," she said impulsively. Jessica nodded, round-eyed. "Me too," she said. So Jessica also entranced by the beauty of the landscape. "Well, sit back and enjoy the scenery," their uncle suggested, "because we've got a long ride ahead to Walkersville." To Elizabeth, though, it seemed that the next hour flew by. There was so much to catch up on. Though their uncle and aunt did correspond frequently by phone and letter, there was really no substitute for a visit. As long as we're reading, I'll just add that aunt and uncle are asking the girls a lot about their lives. Aunt Shirley says, "What about you girls? You must be too young to be worrying about boyfriends," Mrs. Walker said from the front seat. The twins exchanged looks. "Well, actually, there is a guy who's a special friend of mine back home," Elizabeth said slowly. "His name is Jeffrey French, and he's..." She stopped and looked uncertainly at Jessica. Would her aunt and uncle understand how she felt about Jeffrey? It didn't seem likely. Her aunt was looking at her with a bemused expression on her face. "But aren't you a little young to get serious about any one boy?" her aunt pressed her. Shirley, her husband said reprovingly. Anyway, and Aunt Shirley's all like, oh, we're just old fuddy-duddies. Things are a lot different in California than they were when we were raising children your mother's age here in little old Kansas. You know, that's the vibe.
Oh, yeah, that's totally the vibe that she's lying down there.
So I know the reason that this passage stood out to me was that I, as a young girl, every year drove to, as a young girl, my family always took an annual road trip at the holidays, pretty much every year, from the Midwest, but like Chicago area, through either Kansas or Oklahoma to New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So we're driving right through the middle of the country. And with all due respect to any Kansans listening, and not that Oklahoma was so much more exciting, but the drive through the highways of like rural Kansas I would just hope that we would go the other way, because it was just mind-numbingly boring.
So like just a lot of corn, a lot of fields.
Yeah. It's very flat. I mean, you're going through Illinois, Missouri, you know, through the middle of the country, and there's plenty of wonderful things there, but the drive down the highway is not really a super selling point. Although, one difference between me and these girls is that I was living in the Midwest, so it was just more and more and more Midwest. Whereas for them, coming from California, they were seeing something that was novel to them.
Brand new. Lots of fields. Lots of fields.
But then you are from California.
Yes. Well,
have you ever driven through a Midwestern field?
I have. It reminds me of South Dakota, which it's not the Midwest, but just...
No, not quite anymore.
I just remember the wide open, the plains. I just think of the plains. I think I drove through Kansas, like the tiny bit of Kansas on the way there. But I've never... always kind of wanted to go to Kansas, but now I took just a book journey there.
Aw, that's sweet. Okay, so I was already pre-jaded by my Midwesternness to be already bored in a way that the twins were not. I mentioned earlier that Jessica was jealous. That's a reference to, she's talking about how Lila gets to go to Rome or something like that. But that's it. Like, that's all of the Sweet Valley that this book even has. Like, then they go to Walkersville, and that's where they are, and the whole story unfolds there. And that was the big thing that I was warning you about. Yes. Like, this is going to be different. There's none of the home characters.
No, I don't know them, but now I don't know them still.
Yeah, we'll have to have you do a regular one. I have a feeling we can make that happen.
I'm in.
So... did you notice that it didn't actually play that big of a part, but Uncle Herman was the mayor of Walkersville?
Yes, it really didn't play that much big of a part at all. Like, I would forget that he was the mayor, and then it would come up again. But he also owned the general store called... was it called The Walker? Or was it just called Walker? Or
I think it was called Walkers.
Walkers, that makes sense. Yes.
Because their last name is Walker.
Yes.
And the town is called Walkersville. So this is like their town, which you'd think the book would make a bigger deal of.
That's true. Like, who founded this town? Was it founded by the Walkers? I mean, it makes sense.
Oh, and I have to wonder if this book was ghostwritten by the same person who ghostwrote the super thriller that I read with my dad last time, Double Jeopardy, because once again, like, they're hanging a lampshade on how they can't think of any more interesting last names for people, because she points out that Stephen is dating Carol Walker, and it's like, oh, it's the same last name as you guys.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I wonder if they're distant cousins. No, they don't say that in the book. But...
oh, I guess I hadn't thought about that. So are these books ghostwritten mostly, or?
They are, yes.
How did you find out? I mean, just in general, you just know that, or like?
How did I find out? I don't know.
Okay. These books were coming out once a month?
They were, yeah.
Wow. That's really hard to sustain, that level.
Yeah. So you have a bunch of different people that are working on them. Makes sense, Francine Pascal, the creator, has this big, like, Bible and is the ultimate, like, arbiter of what is going to happen in them. But she's almost like the Anna Wintour or something.
Okay, I get it. Like, she wrote, like, generally what would happen in this book, and then someone else wrote it.
Yeah, and all the character bios and things like that. That's my understanding of it. I know that there is a lot of information out there, and there's some people that I could probably talk to that could tell me even more about how it really worked. But part of me has always been a little bit hesitant to look too closely, because it's like, how much do I really want to know about how the sausage is made?
Yeah. because you enjoy it. And yes.
All right. I'm going to keep eating that Sweet Valley sausage.
Yeah.
Guilt-free. So they're in Walkersville, and I don't know, it wasn't immediately clear to me reading this book, like, what was going to happen, like, what the book was going to be about.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't know. This was all a surprise to me. But I just really had a hard time. So Walkerville had like a main street with the Walkers, the general store. It says it has a movie theater. But, like, I had a hard time understanding how big this town was. Like, I wish they would have told us the population.
It's a very, like, folksy small town. And the book even trades a lot in, like, trying to compare it to something from a movie. You know, so it's like, it's its own self-sustaining little town. And it's very, like, 1950s, to the point that it's almost like the people writing it didn't know that it was the 80s and just thought that nothing had changed in the Midwest since the 50s. Like,
okay.
Because there's an old-timey soda fountain that the girls get jobs at, which we'll get to. There is the movie theater, like you said, there's the dime store. One of the funny things about how, like, quaint and small-towny Walkersville is that Jessica has brought, like you said, she's brought these many suitcases, so she's got these crazy outfits. In fact, actually, this passage addresses that very thing. "What an adorable town!" Jessica cried. One thing was certain. She loved Main Street. It was a little like being in a time warp. Everything looked slightly out of date, as if time had frozen, and things remained exactly as they were 10 years earlier. The styles in the clothing stores were out of date, and Jessica, always ahead of fashion, even in stylish Sweet Valley, couldn't help feeling a little bit like a movie star as they walked down the street. She could tell people were gaping at her and Elizabeth. And why not, she thought immodestly. She knew she stood out in her tight black stirrup pants, bright raspberry t-shirt, and black man-tailored jacket she was wearing. Her pointy black sunglasses completed the look, though her aunt looked pained when she put them on. "Jessica, dear, don't you think those sunglasses are a little... Aren't they outrageous?" Jessica filled in for her, digging around in her purse for some chewing gum. She found a pack and offered it around, much to Elizabeth's amusement. "No, thank you," her aunt and uncle said, giving each other startled looks. So, like, even the chewing gum.
Chewing gum. Is that what she wore on the plane? That's what she wore on the plane.
Yeah.
That seems so uncomfortable for air travel.
I don't know, black stirrup pants. I don't know. It doesn't seem so bad.
Okay, it's
the
not
pointy
that bad.
sunglasses
It's just, like,
are the funniest part to me.
I feel like comfort is key.
Oh, yeah, but, you know, I feel like that's kind of a novel notion. Like, for a long time, you got dressed up to fly on an airplane because it was such a special occasion. I don't know if that was still true in the 80s, but as the book just said itself, we're frozen in time.
We're frozen in time. This place.
It's rare that the books admit it, but here is it admitting it. I'm picturing Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I totally see that. That's what I see now. Yeah.
Like that little...
Like that
town square that's like the centerpiece for all those movies.
Yeah. Okay. I see that park.
So that's however big that town is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So early on, we get a glimpse, finally, of what is going to be the big excitement.
I'm just laughing because I'm excited. I'm just so excited.
Yeah. Well, is that how you felt when you read about what?
When I read it, I was like, they were so excited to see boys that I was just like, when they saw Dennis. We don't know it's Dennis.
There's a boy named Dennis.
There's a boy named Dennis. Mm-hmm. Jessica saw Dennis across the street, and she was just like wanted to go talk to him. So I just can't imagine being that boy crazy.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, I'm only here for 10 days, but I see something I like.
And she immediately gets in trouble for it, actually.
Yes,
like, just being Jessica and, like, standing with boys looking at her draws the ire of some chick who comes up with her little girlfriend and is like, come on, Dennis, we're leaving, you know?
Annie Sue.
And that we find out is Annie Sue. Annie Sue, what's her last name?
Stewart? Is it Stewart?
Yeah, that seems right.
I didn't even realize her last name until the end. And then, like, they said, like, everyone knows this is Annie Sue. Was it? Did I know?
But anyway, the big excitement of the carnival is coming to town.
Yeah.
So, this was interesting because, like, the aunt and uncle don't think it's really that great shakes, but Jessica and Elizabeth are super excited about it.
I love how excited they are, but...
Mr. Walker is reading the paper. "Girls, you're in luck," he declared. "The carnival will be in town for the next week." "Carnival?" Elizabeth and Jessica said, raising their eyebrows at each other. Mr. Walker nodded, still scanning the Sunday paper. "It's right here in the paper," he said, smiling. "I knew it was going to be coming, but I wanted it to be a surprise for you." I don't know what voice this is that I'm doing, but whatever. I didn't practice beforehand, so this is just what came out. "The carnival will be in town for a week, starting today at 5 o'clock. "Today?" Jessica exclaimed. "That's wonderful!" Their aunt laughed at the excited looks on their faces, much like we're laughing right now. "It doesn't take long for you girls to get caught up in Walkersville traditions," she said affectionately. "The carnival is fun, but don't get your hopes up too high," she added. "It's just a small-town carnival, nothing elaborate." Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta keep reading because this is the reason
I hope it's the reason that I'm thinking.
But the twins didn't hear her. They were too excited. "A carnival! Can we go tonight?" Jessica asked, jumping up from the breakfast table. She was already imagining how great she would look strolling casually up to the first tent. All the guys would faint when they saw her in her new jumpsuit with the rhinestone studs. She had never been to a real carnival before, and she was sure it would be fantastic. So she's really excited about wearing her
I
studded
thought you were going
jumpsuit.
to read... that part's very important, but I thought you were going to read the part when they describe carnies.
Oh, we'll get to that part. So, it doesn't come up just yet, but
yes.
So we've all, like, I guess it's important to note, like, as we've alluded to, the boys of Walkersville have somehow become, like, off limits to Jessica and Elizabeth.
Because of Annie Sue.
Because of Annie Sue. And they're getting lots of cold shoulder from all of the girls in town.
And their aunt and uncle, keep saying how great Annie Sue is at the same time.
Yeah.
They're like, "Annie Sue is the best. You guys are going to be such good friends." And it is not going that way.
No, not at all. So Jessica, I would have to say, does wear this ridiculous jumpsuit to the carnival. And it is Aunt Shirley doesn't know what to do with herself. She's beside herself about it, but she goes with it like, okay, if that's what you want to wear.
I can't imagine. Just wanting to wear this outfit to something where it clearly doesn't fit into what it's too much for this small town. Why?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's Jessica's feeling a little bit too, right? Like, she gets there and it's kind of like, this is not quite as much as I was hoping for. Plus, they can't socialize really. Oh, and their aunt and uncle are like trying to stick to them like glue. They cannot shake them. Mm-hmm. And these girls are not used to being kept on the short of a leash. And I thought it was pretty clear. Like, before I say what I think, like, what did you think of their aunt and uncle's protectiveness? Like, what did you think that was about?
I thought that, obviously it's a small town. I'm not sure why they were so protective of them in this small town where everything seemed really safe. But then also, their aunt and uncle didn't plan anything for them to do.
Yeah.
So, they were just supposed to sit there all day and not do anything. They drove at least an hour from the airport. So, there has to be something within an hour that's cool. I hate... There has to be, I don't know, something for them to do.
The activities are solely, you can work at the ice cream shop.
Yes.
Which they do a few times. And you can go to this carnival. And, you'll make friends with the local kids. And we learned that Aunt Shirley has been talking up the fact that her beautiful grandnieces are coming to town from California for a long time. And that this has built up a certain resentment in the local girls. And that's what the cold shoulder is all about. And they suspect that. It's a while before that's confirmed. It's not till the end of the book. But getting back to the carnival, I guess I just kind of am thinking that it is all about boys. It's all about protecting these girls and protecting their reputations.
That's true. Yeah.
Like in Bridgerton or something, where it's like, oh, we can't let you be seen alone with a strange man at night, you know? Of course, this is in broad daylight. So Jessica, like, schemes to get them, as this is how I'm recalling, so correct me if I'm wrong, because you read this one recently, but Jessica schemes to, like, break them away from their aunt and uncle. And then, like, from a Ferris wheel or something, she spots this cute boy who's down by the horses.
Yes.
And this is Alex.
That is correct. And then they both go over to see Alex. And then Annie Sue comes over with Dennis.
Yes, so, like, I thought this was so weird. Like, it's not just that Annie Sue dislikes Jessica and Elizabeth and is afraid of them stealing her boyfriend, but when they're going to talk to some other boy, Annie Sue doesn't want that to happen either. She's got to insert herself in that.
So cruel. Like, later on, it seems like she's going to physically hurt them, like, in a really bad way. We'll get there, but let's
get there soon. Okay, here's the part where, so this boy Alex is a cute older boy. He's like a college boy. Do you remember other things about him?
Well, I just remember he was in college, and I just can't imagine, like, when you're in college, he was not a freshman. It's spring break, so it was. He's in college somewhere in Kansas City, I think. Yeah, but just to think about, as a college student, going out with a 16-year-old seems like.
And it's, like, important to note that the book and the characters find it important to make the distinction that while he is technically a carny, it's okay because he is a college student. Mm-hmm. And, like, his father owns the horses, and they like go around from owns the carnival.
He owns the whole carnival.
So he's like the king of the carnies.
He's the king of the carnies.
He's the prince of the carnies, so he's okay. But there's this horse whose name is Midnight that is also an important subject here. Oh, this is cute. So Dennis walks up to Jessica and asks if the rhinestones on her jumpsuit are diamonds. And Annie Sue is like, you fucking idiot. Of course not. An uncomfortable silence followed. Jessica was trying to decide whether it would be better to let Annie Sue have it or try to seem cool and unruffled in front of Alex. He was so cute, she thought. She decided to let Annie Sue's comment pass. My name's Annie Sue, the girl told Alex, who smiled politely, introduced himself to her and Dennis, and tried to turn back to the twins to resume their conversation. But there was no stopping Annie Sue. She wanted to know all about Alex, his job, his association with the carnival, his courses at school, his interest in horses. She seemed fixated on the subject of horses, and when her lengthy description of her own expertise in the saddle didn't seem to hold anyone's attention, she proceeded to clamber up onto the fence, then lean forward to pat the jet-black stallion tethered by himself near the stable. Hey, Alex cried, seeing what she was doing. He jumped over to hold the horse by its bridle. Don't touch Midnight, he said sternly. He's not completely broken yet. He's really not ready to be ridden or touched by a stranger. That's Annie Sue's just I'm gonna touch your horse.
She is there with her boyfriend. Why does she need to obtain Alex too?
It seems like she's gathering intel, and also she wants to like prove that she's the best horse girl. And there's this funny thing about how, like, Elizabeth is interested in horses, but Jessica is not really. This seems like it's doing some kind of trying to square itself with some stuff that happens in the Sweet Valley Twins series, because there's a references to when they were younger, things that happened when they're in middle school.
Yeah, it's all interested in knowing what's to come.
Right.
So then Alex asks Jessica if she wants to meet later. Oh, we find out that Alex has a twin as well.
Brad.
What are the odds?
Yeah, he's busy with stuff, and he's not as quite as into horses. He's more of he's less of like a working with like salt of the earth, like working with your hands kind of guy, and more of a thoughtful, like studious fellow.
Did the twins meet a lot of other twins in the books?
No.
Really?
There were some kids that were twins that they were like caring for once. I really struggle to think of any other twins that they've met in the series so far, and it's been 50 books.
Wow.
So they were really excited to meet twins, and it's a cool plot point. Like, I was excited for them to meet twins.
Yeah.
And Jessica, as soon as she hears how studious Brad is sort of like looking at Elizabeth like, oh, that sounds like your guy. And Elizabeth, of course, is like, I have a boyfriend. But, you know, Jessica's trying to hook them up with these twins. Carney twins.
Alex asks Jessica to meet him later.
An easy mistake to make.
To meet him later at 10:30 p.m. for a horseback riding lesson.
Yeah. And Jessica knows that there's no way her aunt and uncle are going to let her leave the house that late. For any reason, let alone to go meet a new boy who's like an older boy.
A carny, yeah.
And a carny, no less, yeah. So, Gladiators, just to be clear, when we are making fun of the carny thing, it has no actual disrespect to real life carnies. It's just ridiculous and hilarious how much of a big deal the book makes out of it.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having a job. Okay, whatever job it is.
No, it's just that their aunt and uncle is like, we don't think you should be hanging out with carnies.
Yeah, and furthermore, like the aunt and uncle will barely let the girls leave the house by themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, they want to take them everywhere. Like they suggest, like, oh, maybe we can go for a walk, and the aunt and uncle are like, oh, great, we'll come with you. And the girls are like, what is this world? They're feeling very oppressed.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense of the stakes of the aunt and uncle finding out, this is what happens when Jessica says that she was going to go back to the carnival. I met a nice guy there tonight, and I'm supposed to meet him when the carnival shuts down. You met? Aunt Shirley turned white. Herman, she said weakly, clutching her heart. My pills! Mr. Walker jumped up and fished around in a little wooden box on the coffee table. Here you go, he said, bringing her a glass of water and handing her a small white tablet. Your aunt mustn't be excited, he said sternly, looking at Jessica with disapproval. Now, Jessica, what's this about meeting someone at the carnival? Jessica looked at her aunt with dismay. He's not a carny, Aunt Shirley. Honestly, he's a really nice guy. And we weren't going to do anything wrong. I was just going to walk him to the carnival. And Aunt Shirley says, I know your uncle and I must seem like old fuddy-duddies compared to your parents, but Walkersville isn't Sweet Valley. Certain things just aren't accepted here. For your own good, I have to tell you that it's out of the question for you to go back to that carnival unescorted at this hour, in the pitch dark. So that's what we're working with there. So Jessica, makes up that she basically starts pretending that she is really tired and is going to hit the sack at 9:30 every night. 10 o'clock.
Pretty early.
Yeah. And is asking Elizabeth to then cover for her.
I couldn't tell if Elizabeth just, goes to bed too, or what does Elizabeth...
Elizabeth must be staying up later, because what happens is that Aunt Shirley starts to get really worried about Jessica's tiredness. And this is, a major, conflict drama of the book, is that Aunt Shirley thinks that Jessica might be seriously ill and is going to call their parents. And then Jessica and Elizabeth are both going to be in big trouble. Elizabeth for covering for Jessica and Jessica for sneaking out. So Elizabeth continuously has to make up excuses. Do you remember what excuses she makes up for Jessica's tiredness?
Her tiredness. I don't remember her excuses.
What I remember, the first one was that Jessica has had a really hard semester. She's been cheerleading a lot, and she's just exhausted.
The cheerleading one.
Then Jessica might be depressed.
Oh.
And when Shirley almost catches Jessica not being there, comes into the room the girls are sharing, Elizabeth says that Jessica's in the bathroom, and it's like, listen, if you leave us alone, maybe I can talk to her and she'll open up to me about how she's feeling. So at that point, Elizabeth's getting really pissed off.
Yeah, rightfully so. This is elaborate.
Yeah. And Jessica, meanwhile, is just having these hour-long horse riding lessons.
Yes, with Alex. And he just was like, hey, this horse is not broken and wild. Why don't you ride this horse? Which is crazy. You should never... Yeah. I used to ride horses, and you would never put someone who didn't know how to ride on a horse that's not broken. If you're worried about... that's not... He says something about, you don't know any bad habits yet. But you wouldn't know any habits at all.
He tells her something, he... Also that he was exaggerating with Annie Sue, but why? He does not explain that. But Jessica's falling in love with Alex, and she's also encouraging Elizabeth to go out with Brad. They really want to go on a double date, but they haven't been able to make that happen yet. And Elizabeth does start seeing Brad.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can find, you can talk about that a little bit.
They meet, I think, in the middle of the day in town, and they really bond. Oh, he writes poetry.
Yeah.
He's really into poetry, and, like, they have a lot in common, and they went on a long walk, and it was great. And then Elizabeth felt very guilty for not cheating on her boyfriend, Jeffrey, but, like, wanting to and being attracted to Brad.
Yeah. This passage I'm going to read kind of elaborates on some of those things. So Elizabeth is going to meet Brad, but she sees Alex standing by who she thinks is Alex, standing by the corral. And when she calls him Alex, he's like, oh no, I'm Brad. So Alex sends his apologies and asks Brad if he could come, because they were supposed to both be there.
I see.
Okay. Our schedules are totally opposite, and he was afraid we'd never get a chance to get together otherwise. We meaning Brad and Elizabeth. Elizabeth smiled back. You two sure do look alike, she observed. She blushed and glanced away. What a dumb thing for a twin to say, right? People are always saying that to Jessica and me, and I've always thought it sounded pretty silly. Well, you're right, Brad said, resting his arms against the gate of the corral. We do look alike. He thought for a moment, then chuckled. Though we sure don't act alike. The course I'm taking in psychology now at school says that's called compensation. You make up for similarities in appearance by reinforcing differences in character. Really? That's exactly like Jessica and me, Elizabeth exclaimed. It isn't easy being a twin sometimes, is it? It isn't. Brad agreed with a smile. Anyway, so they go on, and Elizabeth is starting to feel a little nervous, like you were saying. He says that he loves writing. Brad tells her, sometimes I think I'll be able to capture how beautiful this country is in poetry, but I know that I've never gotten close. Elizabeth nodded gravely. I feel that way too, she said softly. Brad's eyes fastened on hers, and she could feel herself reddening. He was so good looking, and so different from his brother. He seemed much shyer, much more withdrawn, and so much more sensitive. Yeah, and then there's, like, they go for these walks, and Elizabeth finds herself thinking that maybe she's into him, she feels guilty about it, and then she, like, comes home and Jeffrey's called, and she's kind of like, you know what, I like Jeffrey, I don't want to get into anything with this guy, like, we'll just be friends. So, instead of having both twins pursue one of these Carney twins, it's more like Elizabeth just wants to be friends with Brad.
Yeah, but she still has, at the beginning, she still is into him. She just, she feels guilty for liking him. They go on that long hike.
Yeah. They go on a long hike, and he, like, puts his arm around her or something, and she's just, like, trying to figure out how she feels about it. Yeah. It's relatable.
Yeah.
So around this time, I think, is when they have the thing at Annie Sue's house. At Annie Sue's grandma's house.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
they get all the Annie Sue's grandma, who is her aunt's or the twins' aunt's friend, to get Annie Sue and all her friends to come over for a big lunch.
Yeah, and they've invited the Wakefield twins. It's like the whole thing is supposed to be to, like, welcome them to town. It's kind of weird, right? They're only going to be there for 10 days.
They're only there for 10 days. I don't know why this would be necessary.
But it's like a social engagement that also is like the kind of 1950s-ization of this Kansas town that the book engages in. And when they get there, Mrs. Sawyer is like, is so sweet. The grandma, they love her. They think she's so nice. And then there's like a bratty little sister. And Mrs. Sawyer is like, well, those girls should be here any minute. They're late. I don't know why they're late. And, well, we'll have this little one take you on a tour.
Yeah.
Of the farm.
And then, so they, the little sister takes them to milk the cows, and they has her milk the cow that is clearly temperamental, and the cow could kick them and seriously hurt them.
Yeah.
Like that would like a cow kick would be very, very bad. That's like
This is not an innocent
no,
prank.
that
This
is not
like
an innocent prank.
end up in the hospital.
Yes. I was surprised.
And the twins are canny enough that they catch on really quick that this girl was set up to torture them. It helps that while Aunt Shirley doesn't realize it, these girls know that Annie Sue hates them. Annie Sue has basically told them flat out that she doesn't like them. She stopped by one day when they were working at the
yes.
the
Walker's soda.
The soda fountain, yeah.
That was the soda fountain has burgers and I guess I got this says they had milkshakes, burgers, and hot dogs, but then also they're trained for like 10 minutes on all the dishes that are there.
And then they're just expected to serve everybody.
They're supposed to serve raw meat. Doesn't seem like they have food handlers permits.
No, it was definitely, they were in over their heads.
Yeah.
But it put them in the right place to have a few key encounters.
Yes, that's true.
And so they're already kind of suspect that this whole thing is some kind of a trap. And they're right. And the big diss, other than being tortured by this little girl, is that Annie Sue and her friends never show up.
That's just so cruel to her grandmother.
Yes.
Because, like, she didn't even offer an excuse. She never even told her grandma that they weren't coming. They just never showed.
No. And when she apologizes at the end of the book, she even says something about how her grandmother she's never been able to explain it away. all the calls she's made to her grandma. So we've got the pieces in play here, right? We've got Alex and Brad, Elizabeth and Jessica are both kind of like secretly seeing these twins. We've got Annie Sue super jealous. Key characters. Elizabeth and Jessica bartering about how much they're going to keep secrets from their aunt and uncle. Jessica is suspected of having some kind of sleep disorder. So they talk about how they want to leave the house one day to meet some friends, and they don't want their aunt and uncle to come along, which is what they keep proposing. Elizabeth says, "I'm meeting a new friend in town." "Really?" Mrs. Walker's face brightened. "Annie Sue or one of her friends?" Oh, I'm not doing the voice I made up for Mrs. Walker. "Really?" Mrs. Walker's face brightened. "Annie Sue or one of her friends? I was sure she'd thaw sooner or later." Elizabeth shook her head slowly. "No, not Annie Sue. It's a guy, actually. His name is Brad Parker. His father owns the carnival, as a matter of fact. He's just down here for a week. He's a freshman in college in Kansas City."
Okay.
Mrs. Walker frowned. "Liz, I thought you and I understood each other about carnival boys." She looked distraught. "Your mother would never forgive me if she thought I was letting you girls run around with that kind of fellow." Elizabeth colored, much to her credit. "What kind? Brad's a perfectly nice guy," she protested. "Aunt Shirley, I know how you feel about protecting us, but Brad is really sweet. And he's in college and everything. He isn't even working at the carnival. His father owns it." Aunt Shirley shook her head, distressed. "Your uncle and I don't even know him," she pointed out. "Can't you bring him back to the house and give us a chance to meet him?" Elizabeth sighed. She didn't know how to tell her aunt that inviting a guy over to meet your family was a big deal, that it wasn't a thing you do before you barely even gone on a first date. She barely knew Brad. How could she ask him over to meet her aunt and uncle? Then she starts talking about Jeffrey, and so Aunt Shirley's freaking out.
She is not pleased that's happening at all.
No. It's around this time that they start noticing that all of the girls in town are wearing headbands.
I had to Google what type of headband that was. The bandeau style? Was that
like a bandeau headband?
Yeah.
Just like a stretchy, fabric headband.
I wasn't familiar.
It was so funny to think about that. Like, the headbands were such a fashion-forward thing that the Wakefields introduced headbands to the girls of Kansas, and gradually more and more girls start wearing them.
Yeah, it's very, very popular.
Yeah. This becomes important once Annie Sue like the big, like a crux of the story, a turning point, is when Jessica sneaks out. She's really on thin ice now because the whole, like, her maybe being depressed and maybe they're going to call the parents.
And she wasn't going to go out with Alex again, but then they kissed.
Yeah. So she's out meeting him somewhere in town because she's been riding her bike to town, and then they've been like walking together. And even though it's like super late at night, somehow Annie Sue is out on the town too.
I was like, how is Annie Sue allowed to go out? It's like 11 p.m. Like, why is Annie Sue at the carnival? Isn't it closed at this point?
Yeah, well, they were back. I was confused about this too, so I went back and looked at it again, and they were like in town. Like Annie Sue spots them by the bike racks because Alex has like walked Jessica back to get her bike.
Okay. Does Jessica think she's in love at this point?
I'm sure that she does. Yeah. Okay. So she wouldn't miss hanging out with Alex for anything.
I feel like, does Jessica fall in love a lot in these books?
Yeah, I mean, she falls in this kind of like short-lived love where she's like, I love this boy. But usually once she like catches them, she's not that interested anymore.
Oh, that's... I get the sense she falls in love really like fast.
But I guess it should be said that everybody falls in love in these books a lot.
Okay, my bad. Does Elizabeth fall in love a lot in these books?
I mean, she's always got a steady boyfriend, but she loves her steady boyfriend.
Okay, but it's like, has it been Jeffrey, like, a lot? Or?
Well, no, it was Todd for a long time, and then Todd moved away, and that's why they broke up, and then Jeffrey came to town, and as soon as he got there, they started dating, so.
Okay, well, I mean, that's not bad, I guess...
She's a serial monogamist.
Okay, yeah, but she met this Jeffrey right after Todd left. Got it.
Yeah, pretty much. There were a couple books in between.
Okay, she was single for
Elizabeth was single.
Two books.
Yeah. So it's much something that Jessica is always giving Elizabeth a hard time about because she thinks that Elizabeth should be out like playing the field.
Okay.
Kind of like Shirley and Herman were saying at the beginning. You girls are too young to
be tied down.
Yeah. But with a little bit of a different tinge
because
to
like
it.
she wants, don't be tied down, but don't go out with anyone. So.
Yeah. But what happens by the bike rack is that Annie Sue sees them, and then like the next day, Annie Sue is in full blackmail mode.
Yeah, she was so cruel.
She tells Jessica that if Jessica doesn't do whatever Annie Sue wants, Annie Sue's going to tell her aunt and uncle about Alex. And the implication here, and Uncle Herman has kind of laid this out already, is that, he's the mayor of the town, and like, how wouldn't it look bad if the mayor's nieces were sneaking around with these carnival boys,
these carnies,
behind their back doing God knows what late at night,
Yeah,
that's the implication here. Is that it's not just that Jessica would get in trouble; it's that you wouldn't want people knowing about this.
Yes, it's going to hurt her entire family. It's not about her.
It's very like mafia.
Yes, it's about her aunt and uncle. And, like, you don't want people to know that you've been going out. You're the mayor's niece, no doubt.
I'm going to ruin you.
Yeah.
This town might even be called Walkersville when I'm through with you.
Stewartville.
And maybe there is some kind of deep-seated jealousy there. Yeah. Like the two, these are the Fowlers and the Patmans of Walkersville, the Walkers and the Stewarts. Those are the big rich families in Sweet Valley.
Oh, okay.
So, Annie Sue basically makes Jessica give her shit.
Yeah, everything.
Her sunglasses, those sunglasses that the boys were admiring. Her headbands. What else does she ask for?
She asks for a necklace eventually.
Yeah.
And then she gets Elizabeth in on it too.
Yeah, she approaches Elizabeth flat out asks her, like, what's the deal? And Annie Sue doesn't answer. She's just like, hand it over, bitch.
Yeah, she just doesn't even want to engage. She's just so mean. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, her little sister tried to kill them, basically. Yeah. Like, let's have this cow kick you. Yeah,
this had been written in a slightly different tone. This could have been a Sweet Valley High super thriller instead of just a super edition.
Do people die in the super thrillers? Or
yes.
Wow.
But it's like new people die. Like people you never heard of before die.
They're like, I've been here the whole time. But...
yeah, basically. Okay. I feel like it's around this time that Elizabeth goes on a walk with Brad, where Brad while she's away doing something, Brad hurts his hand. He injures his hand.
Yes.
Pulling
There's
up a nail
involved.
or something. Yeah. Ouch. Whatever. They move along. No big deal.
There's blood. She gets a first aid kit. Elizabeth is, and Brad says something like, "You're a very sweet girl."
Yeah. And
they're like a diss when he said that. You're very sweet.
Yeah, well, maybe he's starting to get the sense that he's not getting anywhere with Elizabeth. Yeah. The new, drama in town, the new drama in the Wakefield twins' life is that there's the square dance coming up. They're going to be going home soon. The square dance is, the last thing they're going to do, and they really want to be able to go with Alex and Brad.
Was it a Sunday night? I don't know why that was important to me, but
I think it was a Sunday night, yeah.
That they would have, a big party on a Sunday night. Just
maybe. I don't know.
Seems like a Saturday night.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. And the whole town is going to be there, and it's a big deal. And Uncle Herman and Aunt Shirley are like, oh, the four of us can go together.
Which I understand is their last night, but at this, yes, I know.
Yeah. And the twins really are trying to convince them, listen, we want to go with these boys. You can meet them first even. It'll be fine.
Meet them together.
But Uncle Herman and Aunt Shirley are basically going to forbid it.
Yeah, not a fan.
And they're trying to figure out how they can break it to the boys. And then Jessica goes down to tell Alex what's up and kind of see him for one last time. And during the day, she even arranges to see him during the day, not at 10:30 at night.
Crazy, yeah.
It's all been their work schedule is so busy. So their respective work schedules. So this is when she goes and meets him at the corral.
He's getting ready to sell Midnight.
Yeah.
To the steward. Also, it's important to note that Midnight is a stallion, and most horses are not stallions, so it's very unusual to ever have a stallion, because they're all fixed basically.
What makes so a stallion it's a stallion because he can impregnate other horses.
Yes, which is what you generally wouldn't want. As if you have a lot of horses.
Yeah, so maybe so you're thinking that maybe Mr. Stewart wants to breed more horses?
I don't know. They made a big deal about. It sounds more romantic to be to add I'm riding a stallion versus you're just riding gelding or
sure.
But it's just unusual that anyone would ride a stallion in general. Just because you don't encounter them.
Yeah.
Unless you're
That's very interesting.
Now I would have to. It's been a long time since I've ridden, but I've never ridden a stallion.
Yeah. Well, and Midnight it is romantic. Midnight is literally a black stallion.
Yes, and it's also I doubt he was black because most horses aren't black. It's very unusual for a horse to be black.
He was whatever the author told us he was.
Yes, he was a
But it's an impossible horse, very romantic horse. Well, no wonder Mr. Stewart wants to buy him so much for Annie Sue.
Yeah.
And for their horse collection or whatever.
Their horse collection.
And Alex is like, okay, Jessica, I'll be right back. I just got to run over for this lunch meeting with the buyer. Will you watch Midnight for me? Because, of course, Midnight and Jessica have a real bond at this point.
Why would you do this? This whole thing is,
very convoluted.
It's just very convoluted, but, why did he need to... It's just he had someone that was supposed to, broker the deal for him. Mm-hmm. But, why is...
Oh, maybe his dad or something was going to come, and his dad couldn't come. Maybe he is his own dad. Maybe the dad doesn't exist. Who knows?
Maybe the dad doesn't exist.
Not to foreshadow too much, but, then, of course, right at this moment, in the, half hour that Jessica is, guarding Midnight, Annie Sue walks up and is like, this is my horse now. My dad's buying him. So I get to do what I want with him. And she basically, Jessica's like, no, Annie Sue, don't, wait. Stop. No.
Yes. Very but Annie Sue was on a mission. She was going to now thinking about it again. Maybe I don't know how common black horses are, but they're not as common as it is. But now I have to Google it.
It's okay. I don't know. All right. So gladiators, take it with a grain of salt. What maybe the horse could be black.
Yeah, it could be black.
But and it was black. Yeah. Because it's fiction. Mm-hmm. But when Annie Sue just jumps bareback onto this horse and is like, wee, my horse now.
Why would you do this? You don't know this animal. You shouldn't do that.
Oh, I don't know why you would do it, but I do know that Midnight has a very bad reaction to this. Okay, she says, don't tell me what to do, Miss High and Mighty. I've been riding horses since I was 3. I know exactly how to handle him. Now get out of my way. And when she jumps on, he rears back because he's freaked out. Whoa, Annie Sue said ineffectually, pulling back even harder on the reins. Stop it, horse! Stop jerking around like that!
Stop it, horse!
Skipping ahead a little bit, it says, much as Jessica disliked Annie Sue, she didn't want to see her in real danger, and Jessica knew very well how dangerous Midnight could be if he became frightened. Annie Sue was beginning to turn pale. He's acting really weird, she exclaimed as Midnight kept pulling his neck back and tossing it wildly, trying to free himself from the pressure on his mouth. Jessica's heart began to pound as her hand was torn loose from the bridle. Annie Sue was in danger, and Jessica had to figure out a way to get her off the horse and back on the ground. But how? If only Alex were here, she thought desperately. He'd know what to do. Annie Sue was beginning to cry a little. Her terror was infectious, and Jessica again wished desperately that Alex were there to help. But Alex wasn't there. So, and then some kind of crazy loud noise happens. The horse gets even more freaked out, and Jessica is, like, arranging herself to, like, jump on the horse and, like, calm it down or something.
I thought she got another horse somehow.
Oh,
she gets on a horse,
yeah.
Horse, which
so
I don't
she
know
can
where
get close
that
enough
horse came
to
from. And like, did she just jump on the like? She didn't. She's ridden like she's ridden 4 times.
Yeah, but she's really good.
4 times.
She's unnatural because she didn't bring in any of her own horse bullshit.
Yes, she's a natural. She just jumped on this other horse, and this other horse was cool going towards this freaked out horse.
Yeah,
which isn't a thing either.
And she doesn't even save the day.
No.
It's Alex
Oh,
who like has heard the kerfuffle and is like running in and saves them. But it's acknowledged that Jessica tried really hard to save Annie Sue, even though Annie Sue has been like extorting her, literally, for the past like week. So then Annie Sue has a total change of heart.
And just what back home with Elizabeth and the aunt and uncle, somehow she finds out that Jessica isn't there at the same time. Yeah. And they're like, and then Elizabeth tells them that Jessica is at the carnival. Yeah. And they rush over to the carnival just in time to see Jessica
had to save the day.
The day. Yeah.
And Alex also has comported himself very well, has also saved the day. He's proven himself to be one of the good ones. And Annie Sue invites everybody over to her house for this like impromptu party. And she apologizes. She tells Jessica she's going to give back everything she took, and she explains what her deal was. And I thought this could be another fun thing to read. The thing is, I've always been incredibly insecure, too. I've always felt like girls in town just like me because, I don't know why, I was afraid of you and Liz. She took a deep breath. The way your aunt and uncle talked about you, you know, making you sound so clever, so glamorous. I was convinced all the kids in town would think you two were the greatest, and I was jealous. And when I saw you talking to Dennis, I wasn't flirting with him, Jessica interrupted. I mean, I guess it kind of looked that way, but I was just... Well,
Jessica totally wanted to be flirting with him.
She said, well, that's just the way I am with guys, I guess. And Annie Sue says, see, the way I saw it, you were flirting. But I guess I had expected or feared that. I assumed you and Elizabeth would both be really experienced with guys. Like Alex.
But, like, also, they were only there for 10 days. 10 days.
It's like she had this whole drama in her head that these girls were going to come to town and just, like, take over the town.
Yes.
And ruin it forever, which in a way I guess they might have. But all the headbands.
Yeah, the headbands now.
That'll be lasting. Maybe rhinestone jumpsuits will come in.
But the best part is coming.
Yeah, the best part is coming. Well, go ahead.
Well, they, at this party at Annie Sue's house, this is like a late party too. I remember like started at 10 p.m. or something, like, very late for the aunt and uncle. Then Elizabeth notices that Alex has a cut on his hand, just like Brad did.
Yeah, and where is Brad anyway? Yeah. You know?
Yes.
So Jessica asks Alex about the cut on his hand, and Elizabeth knows instantly what's happened.
Yes.
There is no Brad, you guys. No Brad. Did you see it coming, gladiators? And also, just as important, did you see it coming, Megan?
Actually, when I jumped ahead because I looked ahead and I saw that there was no Brad because on the back it said there's like a secret that the twins had, or the Alex and Brad have. The secret is there is no Brad. That is so scummy. It's like
very scummy.
Overwhelming. He wanted to date them both.
He just wanted to see which one he liked better. And he has this whole, when Elizabeth confronts him about it, he has this whole spiel.
Yeah.
About how he does feel like two different people.
Oh, come on. Everyone feels like two different people.
Elizabeth was like, yeah, you don't have to be a twin to like have your personality split in half. Like, I feel like that as one half of a twin. So it's such bullshit. Yeah. He really thinks he's so self-centered, really, when you think about it. Like, he genuinely tries to justify his actions.
How could you ever justify the fact that, like, oh yes, I pretended to be two people and we hung out a lot and now, but he claims to love Jessica. I don't know how you could possibly love her after they've known each other for like 9 days, 8 days probably.
He couldn't.
No.
But that's okay. That's the thing that happens in Sweet Valley sometimes. Elizabeth tells Alex that she isn't going to be the one to tell his secret to Jessica, but she expects him to tell her.
Yeah.
And what's coming up is still not the square dance. You know, the square dance is yet to come. And as far as Jessica knows, they're going to be doing a double date.
Yes.
And another note about this that I thought was really funny, just to put a pin in the Brad thing for a second. Annie Sue was just asking if we're planning to go to the square dance, she explained to Jessica. That's Elizabeth explained. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. What kind of stuff do people wear to it? She asked Annie Sue. That depends, Annie Sue said thoughtfully. Some people wear kind of traditional outfits, big full skirts and petticoats, really bright colors, bandanas and stuff. Other people just come in regular clothes. You can really wear whatever you like. Wow, Jessica said, her eyes lighting up. I'd sure love to find a gingham dress like you always see girls wearing in westerns. Annie Sue laughed. I've got about 3 dresses like that. Do you want to borrow one?
Why does she have 3 of those dresses?
I guess if this town is always having square dances, you gotta have a traditional costume.
Have you ever been to a square dance?
I have been to a square dance, but not like a hoedowny kind of a square dance. I have done a certain amount of like country, like contra dancing.
Oh yes, I was going to ask if it was contra dancing.
Yeah, so that's what, like New England-y kind of country dance things, and sometimes at those there's a square dance component.
That makes sense.
Sure.
But it's not like, it wasn't the end of a carnival, was it?
No, and it wasn't like at a state fair.
That would be fun if it was at the end of a state fair. That actually sounds real fun.
Well, to see if we can find ourselves a square dance. And then you find a traditional costume somewhere. Yeah. We'll have to make friends with a girl from Kansas.
Yeah, that has multiple.
Yeah, their closets are full of them.
Yeah.
So, getting back to the square dance, the next day, and Elizabeth is really surprised to learn that Jessica has spent a bunch of time that day with Alex and is still operating under the impression that the 4 of them are going on a double date to
that is just
the square dance.
Scummy. What does Alex think is going to happen? Like,
I don't know.
How is he ever, like, he claims to love her, but like
he's really pushing it to the edge.
Yeah.
And Jessica is surprised when Alex comes to the door alone to pick up the 2 of them. And even still, he's like, yeah, Brad got an intestinal distress.
That was it. That was what he said. Intestinal distress.
Having some kind of a stomach flu or something like that. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, it's just as well then that he couldn't come out. Or that doesn't make sense, but that's basically what they say. Yeah. Then the weirdest thing of all, I thought, of this whole book is that the comeuppance that Elizabeth tries to deliver to...
This is the weirdest part. Like, I mean, there's a lot of weird parts, but like, she talks to Annie Sue and tells Annie Sue that Brad doesn't exist and that Alex is pretending to be twins, which would be like my mind would be blown if I was Annie Sue. I'd be like, what? This man pretended to be 2? That's crazy! But instead, Annie Sue is just like, oh yeah, cool.
And also, like, the guy that saved my life is also a horrible liar?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's messing me up.
My life is also a horrible liar. Yes. Midnight should never have trusted falsely.
Yeah. So the two of them, Elizabeth's reasoning is Alex thought that he could get what he really wanted was to have both twins. And I'll show him what having two twins is really like. And so she and also Annie Sue both constantly ask Brad to dance and like interrupt his dances with Jessica, or like every time a dance is over, they want to dance with him again. And it's basically just like he has a dance partner all night, and that must be exhausting.
So like
it's such nonsense. And then to cap it all off, Elizabeth never tells Jessica that Brad is not real.
Yes, the book just ends. It's just like and so he had his comeuppance. He had to dance a lot.
He was so tired from all that dancing. So there's a nice Mr. Walker gives a speech about how wonderful it's been to have the girls staying with them, but neither Jessica nor Elizabeth could have expressed what was in her heart just then. They could only hug their aunt and uncle, their eyes shining with tears. It had been the most wonderful visit, and they knew that for the rest of their lives they would cherish the memories of their precious time in Walkersville.
But Jessica is in love with a boy who made up a twin to date his sister, or her sister. Like what?
Yeah. Here's what I'll say in defense of Elizabeth.
Okay.
It's almost like Elizabeth knows that she's a part of this strange book series. She's like, we're going to go back to Sweet Valley and none of the shit is going to matter. And in some sense, whether she knows she's a part of Sweet Valley or Sweet Valley High, the series, or Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast, she is right. And she knows her twin well enough to know that as soon as they leave Kansas, Jessica is going to forget about Alex and be on to the next one. And so, ignorance is bliss. Like, whatever.
Like, if these are real people, like, someday they'd be talking, and, like, Jessica would be like, yeah, remember where I dated that guy Alex? Whatever happened to Brad? And, like, Elizabeth would just casually be like, oh, Brad didn't exist. You didn't know? That was 15 years ago.
Now, that is a real mindfuck to think about, like, these girls 10 years later, let's say, talking about, remember those boys? I wonder whatever happened to the Porter twins. And Elizabeth is like, oh, you mean the Porter guy that pretended to be twins?
Yes, and that would be like, what? Because Jessica's ready to move to Kansas. She talks about oh, I'll just tell her parents that I could complete high school in Walkersville to be closer to Alex. But Alex is in Kansas City. Alex isn't in Walkersville. No. We do not know how far Kansas City. Maybe they mentioned
the airport. Probably they flew into, but no, they don't really. I think a couple hours, maybe.
It's not.
I think it's a couple hours.
It's not that close.
No. And yeah. That seems like that would be really good fodder for a future argument between the two twins. When Elizabeth's really mad at Jessica, she could be like, and you know what? Alex Porter didn't have a twin.
Oh my god, that would be a deep cut.
Yeah.
Be like, I've been holding on to that for 2 years.
We'll see if it ever comes up in the books, but I have a feeling that we will never speak of Walkersville again.
That's I just thought that after the end of this, I was just like, well, the next book, she'll have to tell her.
Yeah.
So, but these these super edition, they don't really fit in between. They're just kind of like an offshoot, right?
Yeah, I mean, ostensibly, all of the super editions that there have fit into some break. It's either summer break, or it's winter break, or it's spring break. Mm-hmm. And it's actually worth talking about. This is the last one of the 6 books that are called super editions.
Okay.
Now, there are a bunch of super thrillers, which is a different thing. And there's also, those are the kind of scary ones. Yeah. And then there's eventually something called Magna editions, which are even thicker than these. They'll do those eventually. And then there's something called Secret Diaries. They're sagas. There are other kinds of books that are longer, but this is the last one that is billed a super edition.
Okay.
I noticed that somebody on Goodreads in her review said that this book was so weak, basically, that it ended the whole tradition of super editions.
What was the last one about?
The one before this was about a school ski trip that we never really got to in the course of the book because there was some kind of relationship drama. See how well it's stuck in my head.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have
really
any.
good. Yeah, it doesn't have any. It just like fades away, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't have any like kind of future implications on what's happening in their lives, especially the ones that happen during the summer, because then they're still juniors, when the next book that gets published in time they're still
juniors. And so they've been juniors this whole time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just wanted
in the Sweet Valley High series they have, yeah.
Okay.
So now seems like as good a time as any, now that we've got through spring fever, to ask you, Megan, a question I ask of all my guests.
Yes.
Are you a Jessica or an Elizabeth?
Oh, definitely an Elizabeth.
Yeah, I like that. I like the strength of that.
I mean, why would... I can't imagine anyone... Like a Jessica would be like, she's so brazen.
Lots of people are brazen.
Yes. But she's brazen in a way that she doesn't seem to care about people's feelings, in a way.
Until they almost die on a horse. And then she finds her inner compassion. Yeah.
I imagine like a softer Jessica would be better.
Yeah. Maybe like a mature Jessica. We've gotten that answer
Jessica.
before.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was there anything we missed?
I think we covered it all. I really enjoyed reading the book. But it was super silly, but in a fun way. I needed a fun book for the pandemic that had no relation to a world that we're within right now.
That's nice. Well, I'm glad I could do that for you. And Gladiators, hopefully listening to this, is doing something like that for you too. I'm sorry to make you wait so long for this episode. It really does go back to the problem that these super editions cause in terms of having to order the books from some used source, right? Because they're out of print as well. And then having to get them to the person. And honestly, I'll be frank, that has been exacerbated by the ongoing weather and other pandemic related problems with the postal service. And just you probably noticed, I certainly have in my life, that things are slow. It takes longer to have everything happen. And so, for example, we were going to do another super thriller. A friend of mine, I ordered the book, I had it sent to him, and I checked in a few weeks later, did you ever get that book? And he hadn't. And when I went back to look, the book had gotten sent back to the sender, as no such address. And of course, the address that it was sent to, I checked it, it was right. So that kind of thing, so that was weeks of preparation that could have, been leading up to that episode that was just sort of, out. And during the regular season, it's much more important to me to be on a rhythm. But during the hiatus, it's a little more loosey-goosey. All that being said, I made it clear, I feel like earlier, that my intention was to kind of cover all of, catch all the way up with these super editions during the hiatus. But I don't want to make everybody wait another month or two for a new season, for a season 6 of Sweet Valley Diaries. So I think what we're going to do is we'll get to the super thrillers that we haven't, that will get us caught up into publishing order sometime, during the next season. And so I think we can look forward to a season 6 premiere sometime in the month of April 2021. That will be maybe we'll have you back, Megan, to be a guest during season 6. Yeah, you could come back to my room. Or we could do that one in your room if you want. We could record in the living room, which is where we recorded episode 1 of the podcast. Part of why it sounds so bad. Only one of many reasons why the sound quality. It's a first episode. I've been hearing a lot lately that if the first episode of your podcast sounds good, you waited too long to start.
That makes sense. You just gotta go for it.
It's something comforting. Do you have any thoughts on what this book was presenting to young readers at the time?
Interesting. You could pretend to have a twin and there's no repercussions. Also, nothing bad happens but also I guess it shows that small town America is never changing.
Yeah, that is an
And,
interest. That does seem to be the perspective of the book, which is kind of
Carnies
bullshit.
are scary, but not if they're carnival royalty and their dad owns the farm,
Yeah.
owns the carnival.
Yeah, Elizabeth definitely. I appreciated Elizabeth getting indignant with her aunt about her aunt's prejudice, and that actually felt like we can update that to modern times. And it wouldn't be about carnies, but maybe.
Yeah, but Alex is only okay because he's in. Is Alex in college? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, he's in college.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they're only okay because they're in college, not because they versus...
Yeah, is it the education or is it the ownership? Like,
Yeah.
is it an economic thing? Or maybe Elizabeth would also argue just as fervently in favor of them if that weren't true. I don't know. But yeah, it's it makes me think a little bit about some of the conversations you see surrounding like the minimum wage. And you see this sort of disparaging remarks about people who work in jobs that pay minimum wage.
Yes.
And then the pushback to that, which is like,
yeah,
what's wrong with those jobs?
Very, very. Her aunt and uncle. We don't know what her aunt and uncle did. It's very clear they're retired and he's the mayor, but that's not. Doesn't appear to be a full-time job.
Mean, this is what we're talking about when we're talking about like generational wealth.
Yeah.
Like these people have such deep roots and legacy in this town that the town is named after them. You know?
Yes, and when we
presumably
we first see their house, and it's very nice.
Oh, and it has a
twins,
name. It's called like
the twins were very excited.
Shady Estates or something. That's not what it is. What is it called? It's called Five Elms. Is what it's called.
I love that their house has a name. We should name our apartment.
I agree. We'll work on it.
Yeah.
A house should have a name.
Yes. As nice as Five Elms.
We did it. We did the Spring Fever.
Woo!
Thank you so much for reading this book.
It was fun. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome anytime. Well, listen, gladiators, thank you for being patient with Sweet Valley Diaries during this hiatus time. Please do me a huge favor and tell a friend about the podcast. Send them this link, tell them about this episode, or just send them your favorite episode. It helps me a lot, actually, to have more listeners. It helps keep the podcast going, and if enough people listen to the podcast, there could be a future in which hiatuses are no longer necessary for reasons that I can get into if you want. But right now, we'll skip it. Follow me on Instagram at Sweet Valley Diaries or on Twitter at Sweet Valley. You can see this episode and all sorts of other stuff at sweetvalleydiaries.net, with the website that will turn 15 this year.
Wow!
Send me an email if you want at sweetvalleydiaries@me.com. Thank you again so much, Megan.
Thank you, Marissa.
And still working on that sign-off. Haven't gotten there yet, but for now we'll say, come along to the country with Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield and catch Spring Fever.
Yay!
Okay,
That was fun. That was fun.
So does that make me Miss America?
Super Edition number 5, Spring Fever. Let's check and make sure this is actually number 5. Oh, it's impossible to tell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my gosh.